we lived through the big Tohoku earthquake. You would know it probably as the Fukushima disaster. As a solo dev and a white guy who's only ever been on the periphery of this kind of culture, it's not really my story to tell. So to avoid that kind of cultural appropriation type element to it.
I don't know, at the end of it, do you kind of feel like it's even worth it? Back in the day when Blockbuster was still a thing, I don't know if you guys had Blockbusters. Are you in Australia, or where are you actually?
Yep, I'm in Australia. We had equivalent to Blockbuster. I'm not sure whether we had. Oh no, I think we did. We did have Blockbuster itself. It wasn't local to me, but yeah, we did have it. Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay, cool. So like we had me and one of my best friends, we would go on like the weekend or whatever, and we would go grab like a stack of old like Chinese and like Korean and Japanese like film, and we would just watch them like straight through. It's some of our favorite movies we found that we ended up watching were like there's this movie, I don't know if you've seen it or have heard of it. It's called Tiger on the Beat. It has Chow Yun-fat and like Conan Lee, which I think is Bruce Lee's brother or something like that. It's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen in my life. Like I'm not to this day, I'm like, this is literally one of the best movies I have ever seen. But anyway, I get some vibes like that, like you kind of like those old like Asian or like Chinese movies where it's like it's such a kind of silly character, but like they're like obviously a martial artist for some reason. They can obviously just totally screw people up. But anyway, those were the vibes I kind of got from it. I don't know if those are right, but
Cool. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I grew up in a really multicultural part of Melbourne. So that's the city that yeah, well, I mean, in the suburbs, but grew up with friends from all over the world. My best friend was of Chinese background, and so I would always hang out at his place after school on weekends, school holidays, things like this. And a lot of his family's movie diet was that kind of stuff. So
oh wow, yeah,
the Jackie Chan and the Bruce Lee, particularly Jackie Chan. There was a lot of Jackie Chan in there. So Armor of God and all that sort of stuff. Police Story, those things. And
so good.
It's definitely a big influence on the character, like you say, and just the idea of having a because of course it's a whole comic book type thing with my game. Just having a superhero who their martial arts based skills or superpowers or whatever, they make sense because of their cultural background. So it also ties in that way, and it comes back to that sort of kung fu movie content. So
yeah. And when I see the superhero costume, I can't help but think, I don't know why I think of this, but I look at it and I'm like, reminds me of like when this is gonna sound so stupid. Do you watch anime at all?
Yeah.
Like have you so like OG like Dragon Ball Z, when like Gohan like got a little bit older and he like decided to be what do you call his alter ego? But he decided to be that superhero. Like those are the vibes I get when I see it. I don't remember what the superhero, what his alter ego superhero name was, but that's kind of what I like get when I see him. But yeah, I just thought that was funny.
I exhibited the game not so long ago, maybe a month ago now. A little bit less than a month ago, and I didn't overhear this trailer. My eldest daughter was helping me exhibit, and apparently there was some guys come past and they saw the poster and they said, "Oh, what's this lame Dragon Ball type pose on this character?" So apparently people see that in there too.
I feel like that's kinder than what people have said about my game. People have called ours a Temu Vampire Survivor, and I was like, man, that sucks. Oh man, whatever. You take what you can with what people say about stuff, but that is kind of funny. Are you a traditional artist? Like, is it like what you do for a living, and then this is kind of the side job? Like, what is or the side hobby, or kind of give me a little bit of background, like the art and then you making a game. I don't know
Uh,
if that makes any sense.
it does. Yeah, no, it's a long, complicated story, I guess, but to keep it reasonably straightforward, my work life has little or no connection to game
Mhm.
dev. Um, I'm an English teacher,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, so there's no real connection here in terms of career. Um,
Yeah.
I know at one stage I was teaching a little bit of IT, and I, included some
Mhm.
programming and a little bit of basic game dev, but that was many years ago using Visual Basic. So there's a little
Mhm.
bit of, you know, I suppose professional background there. When it comes to the drawing side of things, the illustration, the animation stuff, that was sort of one of my major hobbies, I suppose, for a long time.
Mm.
So
Mm.
even as a teenager or whatever, I was drawing, I was making comics, um, and the story actually for Future Ghosts does come from a story that I developed um, as a kid, and then redeveloped
Mm.
as a teen, and then revisited again as an adult. So this is
Mhm.
really long term thing. But then in terms of the skill development and having a little bit of background in illustration and animation, that's something that I used quite a bit in the early 2000s, making animated music videos as a kind of a
Oh,
hobby
cool.
slash side hustle. So yeah.
That's actually really cool. So, yeah, you're right. That is not, I wouldn't say polar opposite, because you obviously had to write a story. So, so I'm assuming there's some a little bit of a cross expertise in a way, but that is really super interesting. It's a little bit similar to like my story. I come from the business world, and I've been in doing business and own my own business and doing that stuff, doing IT and stuff like that for like 15 plus years. And then I was actually just telling the story yesterday. I was already kind of on the outs and just completely over it. I never really wanted to like be, it's like something I knew how to do and I had been doing for so long. And when I was a kid, like 14 years old, I'm like, I loved building computers. For some reason, I loved just like, I would say there was a website, two couple different websites I'd go on when I was like in high school, when I'd supposed to be probably be doing work. And I just sit on those websites and I'd like put computer parts, like, oh, what if I put this computer part here and this computer part here? Like basically build like a shopping list in a way, and where I'm going with that was just like I would do that, and then all of a sudden, as I got older, like I had several mentors that were like, well, you can't make any money building computers, just building computers. I was like, and me being naive at this point, I'm like, I could have made a YouTube video of me and now tons of people just build computers and do very well just building computers. But anyway, I digress. But so I got into the business of doing, computer IT and stuff like that, support for big, large firms and things like that. And it's just like it never really was something that I'm like passionate about. It was just something that I knew how to do that kind of pay the bills. Fast forward, I eventually was just like, I can't do this anymore. Hey, I can't do it anymore. I just don't like doing this. I don't want to build it. I don't want to grow it. I don't want to do any of it. And it was a weird time because I ended up watching Arcane, the animated series. Oh my god. And like, I've always kind of been into wanting to do something creative like my whole entire life. Like I used to do 3D modeling and a lot of different stuff. I've always loved CG. And like when I was just, I have no real big affiliation with like League of Legends, or not affiliation, but just affinity. Just don't really care about it that much. But like for some reason, I was just like, well, I'll give this thing a try. I'm like, it looks interesting or whatever. And I watched and I was like, oh my God, this is like phenomenal. I was like, I can't believe how freaking good this show is. And it blew me away artistically, story wise, like the entire thing, the entire package was so impressive. I was like, that's it. I can't do this shit anymore. I'm going all in. I'm like, I don't care. And so I went off, I made a couple little projects here and there, and then ended up falling with this project with me and like luckily like one of my best friends and three or four other people. And we're just slowly building this project. But it's like I'm like all in now at this point because I'm just like, I cannot do it anymore. I have to just go with it. I have to go creative. It's what I care about. Even the show is something that's fun for me to do. And I I've spent a lot of time doing too many things that I don't care about. And when it fails or it doesn't work out, it's like it's harder because you're just like, it's not even something I wanted to do. So like falling or stumbling, it's just like it feels like an even bigger setback. Where like failing or stumbling on something that you love to do, you're just like, well, whatever, I'll figure out the next thing to do. I'll figure it out, because it's just like you can. It's just easier to push forward when you really love the thing that you're doing. Anyway, I really went on a tangent there, but that's kind of where I thought it was interesting. You're like, uh, I don't even remember how we even got here, but I know you said something and it got me there. So, but anyway, I just wanted to make that point real quick, I guess.
Yeah, sure. No, and it makes a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, it, um, when you've got that creative spark in you from, whatever source that is, whether it's, you've watched
Uh,
this amazing animated series on Netflix, or, just you've got the story in your mind that you just want to tell, it's going to drive you forward, right? It's going to
yeah,
provide that momentum. It's going to provide that motivation, and it's going to give you something that your work life can't,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough balancing like what you should do. And as I was a kid and I was growing up, I always chased like opportunities and things like that. Anything that kind of popped up that was seemed interesting. I've always had a lot of broad interest generally. I'm not sure if you can relate to this, but I've found a lot of things very interesting in game design, film, comic, like, and then just also even in the business world, I have a lot of business interests as well. And sometimes it's so hard to like stay focused on one thing for such an insanely long period of time. And then I've always known this, especially in the business world, but it's like, they always tell you it's like, that why behind what you're doing. And it's like it takes a long time for some of this stuff that you hear over and over and over and over and over to finally click. You'll hear and you're just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I understand why I'm doing this because I want to help people. I want to do this. I want this or with this, or I want freedom. I want whatever the why is. And in the business world, it's so common, but it's also so, or like not common, but it's so, um, what's the word? It's not hidden. Like when you get into business, it's very much like, kind of like a mentality. It's like you can't just say I'm going to do this because I want to make a bunch of money. It's not good enough. It has to be more than that because when you don't make a bunch of money, you still need to be able to push yourself forward when you're not making the money. And so like that's kind of the balance and the why. And I was like, yeah, no, I get it. But it took, man, some of these things you hear over and over and over, and you think you get, you don't really realize that you don't actually get until you finally make the step forward. And you're like, oh, now I get it. This is why that why is so important, because when you're actually doing something you really care about, you know. Anyway, I don't even know. I was just kind of going off on some tangents here. Like I said, it's early in the morning and I just started my coffee, so I'm gonna get that spike of energy and caffeine.
Waiting for that to hit.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, we'll balance each other out. I'm just starting and you're just going down. uh, but anyway, so give me a little bit of background. Give me a little bit about Future Ghost, like why you made this. Give me like how long you've been taking. Just give me just a snapshot of Future Ghost and like the origins of it and what you want to do with it and everything.
Sure. So, yeah, like I was saying, the idea is a really, really, really old one. It's one that I've had since I was a kid, in one form or another. But as you get older, it becomes more complex and more sophisticated in terms of the story and its various levels. Yeah, I kind of feel like I probably wasn't quite ready to tell this story until I hit my
Mm,
40s. So,
mm,
I'm kind of glad that it's taken this long. But in terms of turning into a game, I first decided that I was going to do that back in about 2017, 2018.
mm,
So even that is a pretty long development time. But of course, we had COVID lockdowns and everything in between that. A
right.
bunch of other stuff happened. a personal life that just sort of slowed everything right down, ground it to a halt. But then in its first iteration, the way it looked wasn't really right anyway. Like I wasn't sort of married to the visual style. I wasn't really feeling any connection to it. And yeah, the story needed a rejig as well. Because I found myself initially with all the elements where it's, the kung fu stuff that we've talked about. There was some sort of, it was set in the real world initially, in sort of current times, and reflected on things like the Cultural Revolution in China and some history there. So yeah, it was a solid story, but I didn't feel that, as a solo dev and a white guy who's only ever been on the periphery of this kind of culture, it's not really my story to tell. So to avoid that kind of cultural appropriation type element to it, I rejigged it, rewrote it so that it's set in the future now. And there's that distance from the cultural element. The same themes are still in there. There's a whole thing about, it's set so far in the future that humanity has sort of had to sort of cut its losses with Earth, just exploited it to death. And now they've got to get out. So now they're on Mars, which is, only marginally better because it's not trying to,
Interesting.
it's not trying to kill them with weather events that are out of control and seismic events and things like this. It's a stagnant state of being where, by the time the story of the game starts, humanity's been there for about 5 centuries. They've tried to make it
Interesting. Okay.
livable, and they've partially succeeded in that. But that element means that the same kind of stuff that occurred, you could say, with the Cultural Revolution, where it was a lot of they got rid of a lot of things that they saw as imperialist, and a lot of things that were sort of a part of Chinese culture, but they weren't going to fit in with the new society. And so they just sort of sterilized those elements of Chinese culture. And thankfully it hasn't been lost, most of that stuff. It was maintained by the Chinese diaspora. It was maintained by people sort of hiding knowledge secretly and stuff like that. But, I wanted to play around with that a little bit in the original story version that I had back in 2017, 2018. And having that, evacuation from Earth, and, we've had to sort of say, no, we're going to cut our losses and start again on Mars. There's room for an even bigger exploration of that distance from culture, because, by that stage, the future that I imagine is you've had to have a consolidation of the human race, so it's just everyone's just together, and and they've done a kind of an assimilation style approach, which people often say is the what's happened in America with the idea of a melting pot. But this thing is that is a means of survival, basically, as a human race. It's like we can't have these differences of culture anymore, because that's a source of conflict. So we're it's a somewhat dystopian notion. And then in the future that I've got there on Mars, where there's people who have settled, they're at a stage where, we've got this, sustainable environment for ourselves, but who are we? We're all sort of refugees from Earth, or, the fourth, fifth generation, whatever it is, of those initial settlers. Who are we? Well, we're either Earth-born or we're Mars-born. Well, what does that mean? And you've got these nativist ideas of these people who are the fifth generation Mars-born or whatever. But then you've also got this sort of vacuum, this cultural vacuum in this society, where people want that connection to who they are and where they come from, and things like that. And that sense of, identity beyond just, I am my job, and I am my morals, I am my values. They want more than that. So that doesn't really answer your question entirely.
No, no,
Uh,
no, it totally I actually I just thought of, like, what it was so you said something, like, as far as, like, you didn't feel I don't know if I'm paraphrasing this right, but, like, you didn't feel necessarily comfortable really because 'cause you've had this story for a long time. You've had the idea of this story for a really long time. So, what changed as you got older that you felt, like, more comfortable that you're like, "Okay, now I feel like I can really tell this story in an appropriate way or in a way that you feel the most comfortable?" What I guess, life or change happened and that you're like, "Okay, now I feel like this is a good time to do this." Like, what was that?
yeah, I suppose becoming a father was a big part of it. Um, and this is something that you can relate to, I'm sure. The idea of
Mhm,
raising these little humans and helping them to understand the world. It just sort
mhm,
of it helps you understand the world. I think
yeah.
as well as a person. You're
Gives you
seeing.
great perspective.
That's it.
Very good perspective.
Yeah. So I think that was the major thing. Also, just suffering, you know, personal loss of different people passing away as you
Mhm,
get older. The people around you.
mhm,
Um, uh, I, I moved to Japan for about 5 years with my wife, and that's where we sort of started our family. And
mm.
yeah, we lived through the big Tohoku earthquake, um,
Oh,
which in
I'm
2011.
not super
The, the
familiar.
the you would know it probably as the Fukushima disaster.
Oh, shit. Okay, yeah.
So yeah, like we
Yep.
weren't in Fukushima, we were in Chiba, which was about a bit less than 200 kilometers away. But and I was in Tokyo. I was in the city for work at the time when the big earthquake hit. So
Oh.
so living through these sort of events, um, I think informed my perspective on the world. Um,
Mhm.
that I just absolutely did not have that as a teen or as a young adult or anything. So
No, I mean, I absolutely love that because it's just like, especially the what you said about like having kids. I think it's one of those things, you hear it as you grow up. Your parents tell you, you'll know when you have kids, and you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then as you get older and you have kids, you're like, holy shit, no, I get it now. And it's having kids is just such I think more people should have kids. I think a lot more people would have a lot more humility in their life and just kind of level themselves out a little bit. I think people get a little bit. I mean, also, what's the point too? I'm very much like a pro life, or no. Let me rephrase that. I'm a pro human person, and so it's like I think having kids really gives you as a human, as a person, a lot of perspective on what the hell we're here for. Like what's the point of it all? And watching them grow and learn and everything and just trying to pass down that type of information, but it's like, yeah, that's a big one for me, and so, yeah, man, it's hard too. Oh my god, it's hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, by far. Nothing even comes close to it. But, I mean, that's cool. I mean, I love the evolution of the story of, like, I mean, everyone kinda has these little stories that you kinda had when you were a kid at some point. I have, like, a couple that I'd love to, you know, uh, realize at some point, but, you know, I've also very much believe everything kinda happens in its own time. Like, you have these things that you wanna do or whatever, but it's like, it's not until you go through some things that you finally can realize it the way that it really should be. And you know, and it's hard in the moment because it's like, especially when you're really trying to push forward and do something, and you're like, man, I really want this to work, but it's like not until time has passed and you get some that perspective that we were just saying that you're finally able to go, okay, no, now I can see how I can actually realize this to be a full thing. And you kind of needed that experience or needed those failures or needed those hard things to happen in front of you for you to finally go, okay, now I get it. Now I can actually sit down and make this thing. I mean, like I was just saying, it's very similar to to my life in a situation. It's just like I don't think I'd be where I am now if I hadn't gone through so much beforehand. I wouldn't be where I'm just like, okay, no, now I need to do this thing. But if I hadn't gone through kind of in a lack of a better term, the bullshit. I mean, I wouldn't know. So, um, but I mean, it's cool. I like how this story's really stuck with you for this long. I mean, um, how has been some of the response out there as far as getting it out there? I really like it looks like an old newspaper, and I don't know how you did it, but it looks like an old newspaper. And I love that, like it's not, it's like not film grain, but I can't figure out what exactly to call it. But I want to know like what other people are saying about, but also like how did you do the film grain on all this art?
Right. So, yeah, as I mentioned, I actually exhibited the game for the first time. I took it to an event here in Melbourne called the Game Expo, which,
Mm,
the name kind of speaks for itself. But it's a very sort of grassroots sort of event. So a lot of
mm,
the only indie games on display. No,
mm.
no AAA, no
That's cool.
yeah, like they have a couple of things that are going on that connect to the AAA um, game industry stuff. So they've got like
Mm,
a Just Dance corner, and they got a bunch of
yeah.
different esports competitions going on. But for the exhibition of games, it's just indies. So there were 28 of us there exhibiting our games this year. Um, and I wish I had counted how many people came through my booth. I didn't, but I gave out 87 flyers,
Mm.
and yeah, it was busy pretty much the whole time. Especially, it was over a weekend, so it was the Saturday and the Sunday.
Oh wow.
Saturday was flat out, like just there was sort of no chance for a break. As I
Oh
said, I had
wow.
my oldest daughter there helping me out, so I got to grab some lunch, but I didn't get a toilet break during the day at all.
Oh no.
It was crazy. Sunday was a little bit slower, but yeah, still reasonably steady. So there were people coming down, coming through, sitting down, and playing through the whole demo, what I had built at the time, which is,
Okay.
depending on how you play it, it's up to about 30, 40 minutes worth of gameplay, and people were just sitting there playing it all the way through, and looking up and going, whoa. So yeah. In
That's
terms
cool.
of immediate reactions, though, to answer your question in terms of how the thing looks, yeah, that's what everyone that was the entry point. It was like, I love this art style. And you're just looking at
Uh,
the poster, looking at the flyer. I was like, this is crazy. It's like, yeah, this feels like a comic book, so,
mm,
and that's the intention. So you likened it to a newspaper. Um, the thing is, what the paper that they called it, the grade of paper that they printed comic books on, like well, all the way up to like the late 90s, is newsprint.
mhm,
Okay, they printed it on
mm,
newsprint, so it's the same grade as a newspaper, and that's to save money, right? Because they needed to have
right.
the business reasons, had to have the cheapest possible production on the comic, so they could sell it
Mhm,
and make money from it. And it's only in
right.
more recent decades that the paper grade and the printing processes have improved, and the price has gone up a little bit. People are more willing to pay for these things, um,
Mhm,
and so yeah, it's changed. The whole aesthetic has changed. But my experience of comic books coming up as a kid was that newsprint stuff, and like
mm,
the ink bleeding into the paper, and
mm.
that roughness, and they call them Ben-Day dots, which is the printing process that they used back then. Um,
Okay.
they only had a very sort of limited range of colors that they could print using, and to create additional colors, they would use dots to combine the colors. It's, if you think
Right,
about, they call it halftone in more modern
right.
print terms. And if you're going to do that in, say, Photoshop with a bit of post processing, or Illustrator, I think has some plugins for this as well, it will be a halftone approach
Mm,
that you'd be using. Um, my process is not post processing; it's actually pre. So what I've got is I've got a bunch of swatches
mhm.
that have taken the little color samples, basically, from the old comic books.
Oh, cool.
So it's actually, I've scanned it at the highest resolution I could, gotten the
Yeah,
biggest chunk of each color I could, and
yeah.
that's my swatch. And so everything that you see is actually, it's a direct scan from a comic book. And then it's all about keeping it consistent in terms of the resolution of the game itself, so that it doesn't sort of break that effect. But you're actually looking at paper texture, and you're looking at Ben-Day dots, and you're looking at that ink bleed from the mid 80s when you
Oh
play
wow,
the
yeah.
game.
So, like, what I'm just curious. Like, so you do hand draw, or is this on you drew this on like Photoshop, or this is all hand drawn?
It all starts out as hand drawn stuff. It's pencil and paper to begin with, and
Wow.
then that gets scanned in, and then I do the inking on the
Mm,
computer. I actually use vector art for that, and
okay.
then just fill using those swatches for the colors.
Yeah. I think it's so like this is one of the things that I'm like, it's so cool about indie devs is like you would think like the only reason the thing like what you were just saying, the reason why it looked that way is because of technical barriers in a way. And we've gone so far into this other world because now there's the technical barriers are so minimal. There's such minimal technical barriers. So a lot of the time we've lost a lot of this old technique that had to be created out of because of a technical barrier because we didn't have the trillions of colors and just kind of blop it in there and there you go, you're done. I think about like old like cells. Like I watched this thing on Disney where they had to build they made it for Bambi, but it was like they had this 4 or 5 layer plate like thing so that he can actually show like the scenery moving with the camera. I forget what the effect is called. But it was like this huge technical $1 million machine that Disney pioneered just to get this one effect, which was having this as you pan, having the scenery move at a different speed than the background move at a different speed than the foreground. So it actually had that. I forget what it's
It's
called.
called
I'm not sure if you remember.
parallaxing.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. 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 And so like they had to build this crazy machine with these crazy big glass plates that were like so far apart, and then they had to have a camera shooting all the way down on top of it. It was insane, and I'm like, and now it's like you could just put it in any basic software at this point and just there we go, it's all done. And it's like we lose a lot of those old uh um those things that had those technical barriers had a character that isn't that we lost or forget about. Like I love like 90s 80s and 90s anime, like this art style of 80s, and a lot of it was because like you were just saying, like they only had so many colors they could use, and that's why it looked the way it looked, because the color palette that they could use was just, it wasn't what they could use now. And I just love that style, that kind of, it's not necessarily muted, but it is a little bit of a muted colors and things like that. It's not super vibrant the way it is now. And I just miss that like in so many different ways, like OG Gundam and stuff like that. Oh my God. I'm a freaking nerd for that stuff. So, but anyway, so that was what you were just saying is like, yeah, when I first reached out to you, for sure, the art style is what caught me. I was like, what the heck is this? This is so cool. Oh, that's a menu screen. I was like, dude, I want to see if this guy's wants to be on the show for sure. I think his art is super, super cool. Um, but anyway, so yeah, I think it's cool that indies are finding ways to kind of bring back some of that old style, even though it's not even necessary anymore. Like because our technology has gone so far, but in a way we've lost so many. Like obviously the whole thing of like pixel art is like huge in the indie community. Our game is pixel art, so it's like, but it's like we especially as millennials, I'm not sure what generation you are necessarily, but millennials were so nostalgic. We're so nostalgic for what we had in like the 90s and stuff. And so like having a lot of this stuff come back up, and I was talking to some people that were making like Game Boy games, like a brand new Game Boy game, Game Boy Color game, or like a brand new Nintendo 64 game, or Nintendo game and stuff like that. Like they're like, yeah, I made the game and I ordered the parts for the cartridge, and it's a brand new game. And I was like, that's freaking crazy. That's you don't think about that, like there's this stuff out there, but it is. Oh man. So yeah, we kind of touched on just like I wanted to bring up, but we touched a little bit on like uh what took in a way so long, but like uh just as far as you feeling necessarily just timing on your life and feeling more comfortable and when to get this thing out. Are you making a so you sorry, I'm kind of bouncing all over the place, but you said at your live event you had a demo or demo version for people to play. Are you planning on putting that demo version out on Steam anytime soon?
Yeah, I'm going to put a slightly longer demo onto Steam, just because I
Okay.
want the player to have a relatively full experience of the gameplay elements. I mean, it's this thing where I'm throwing all sorts of different gameplay at the player just to tell the story, so it's very varied. But I want them to the thing that's missing at the moment that I want them to experience is the character upgrade stuff. So that you're going to be able to choose which stats get upgraded when you level up. You're going to be able to choose your ability upgrades as you go along, things like this.
Mhm.
But that's not in there yet. So once that's in there with the next sort of combat scenes, there are two more fights. There's like yeah. So at the moment, there's a tutorial fight, which is a lot of fun. Um,
Mm.
it's a play fight with the main character's brother. So they're doing all sorts of crazy stuff like stop hitting yourself and tickle
Oh,
attack.
okay, cool. That's
Yeah.
funny.
So yeah, I've got some silly humor in there as well. It's like the what I've been saying so far makes it sound really serious, but there's some fun stuff in there too. But I want the player to have this one more fight with just sort of some low level grunt type enemies, and then a sub boss, and then they get their upgrades, and so
Mm.
that'll sort of round things out, and it's kind of the end of the opening to the whole story as well. So that's what people will be able to play in the demo, which will be on Steam. And you know, as you know, you can't really put a time on it on these things unless you're really, really close to release. But
Yeah.
hoping it's going to be like 1 month, maybe 2 months away, something like that.
How indie devs are pulling back a lot of and pulling back all these old technologies that kind of give us that nostalgic feeling. But since they are so almost in a way tried and true or were used for such a long period of time, it almost makes it a little bit easier for indie devs to kind of step into that boundary. But I like the idea because those old technologies had such a unique art style to themselves that like what we were talking about before, like 80s, 90s anime, OG Gundam and things like that, like and older ones, Akira and stuff. Yeah, I remember watching them paint the cells. I watched like a video or something like that where they're painting the cells of like the Akira movie, and I was like, dude, that's so freaking rad. And that's what's cool about yours is like you have that old newspaper feel to it, and the fact that you hand drew everything is so cool. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it was so hard. Oh, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you. Like, you kind of touched a little bit as this on it is just like how is like balancing your family and work life affecting the this game and I don't know at the end of it do you kind of feel like it's even worth it and like what's kind of your opinions on that?
Yeah, that balance is always difficult. Yeah. Like I've done my best, I think, to maintain a good balance for the most part. It definitely slows things down, but I mean, you don't want to sacrifice your personal life for the sake of a creative project, right? So, um, when it comes down to it, you got to prioritize your family, um, and you're going to have to prioritize your work that is putting food on the table, keeping a roof over your head, over these creative projects. So yes, it definitely slows things down. Um, at the start of it, this time around, with the current art style and everything. So we're talking, what would have to have been 2023, late 2023, third quarter 2023. I actually took what we call in Australia a term, which is 10 weeks. So I took a term of work using what long service leave I had available to me, just so that I could sort of really dive into it and make a proper start. And I actually got all of the background art penciled within those 10 weeks. But that degree of productivity is something that I haven't really been able to recapture that often. Because I mean, when the kids are on school break, that's when I'm on break from work as well as a teacher. But that means you're going to pivot to being a dad rather than being a teacher and using whatever spare time you've got. You're being a dad and trying to prioritize your kids, but then also trying to get some work done on the project. Before that, the Game Expo, sort of getting ready for that, it was a lot of game dev, but it was also a lot of sort of getting some merch ready, getting the display ready for the booth, all this stuff. I probably neglected my family a little bit in the last month in particular, when I was sort of getting that fight scene that I mentioned before, getting to the point where players could reach that and play that and at least have that degree of fullness of the experience of the game. So yeah, I was sort of working my 9 to 5, and then I've got a small business head on top of that as well, for doing that. And then in the evening, as soon as we had done whatever we had to do with the kids, like the dropping off and picking up for their activities, whatever it was, there was all my focus went into the game. And that was probably the most intense amount of time I've had to be able to focus on it since those first 10 weeks when I was just doing the background art. It's a difficult thing to balance, and I don't have the luxury of being able to stop work to just do the project at this point. I'm kind of hoping that I might be able to get some financial backing, and I'm looking at doing that through some grants that are available here in Australia. Because that money could buy me time off work that I could then spend on future goals and get it done more quickly. But you just sort of do what you can, right? She's doing it as a hobby. Because when it boils down to it, that's what this is for me. It's a hobby. So
Yeah, and actually that was one of the things I was just going to ask you is like, what is your plan as far as public? Like, obviously right now it's self-published, but is this something you're looking in the future to possibly get to a point where you're looking for a publisher? Are you even teasing that aspect? And you just kind of said a little bit like, you're looking for the grants and it is a hobby, but I always, in my opinion, I always feel like every great hobby always is like the aspiration to become a full-time gig. Is that kind of a little bit of what you're thinking or hoping? And also back to just the publisher side of it, like what does that kind of look like?
I'm a little bit wary of publishers. It's the whole sort of, I don't know, they're not all sort of dodgy, but there is that potential element to it, and there are traps that you can fall into. And I think of some horror stories like what's the big one? Got a mental blank on it, but you might be able to help me out with it. That it's another narrative adventure game. It's the one with beautiful, beautiful artwork. It was artists who actually got together to make that game. Disco Elysium, that's the one.
Ah, yeah. Well, yeah, that's the last guys I just talked to, or one of the last guys I talked to. That's the game they kind of based their game off of. But yeah.
All right. Yeah. So I don't know if you know about all the dirty business that went on with that, and the guys who created it, they ended up with nothing, and they lost the IP, they lost the copyright, and they got no rights to that property at all anymore. And that sort of thing happening in recent times, it just sort of makes me really concerned that could be what happens if you start to look for a publisher. But then I've also heard plenty of good stories about people having good experiences with publishers. I don't know. I'm planning to really just self-publish initially, then just sort of see where it goes from there. In terms of would I like it to blow up and become something more than a hobby? Maybe, I don't know. That's a double-edged sword as well. Publishing with someone and with the company and blowing up, they're both double-edged swords. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'll be comfortable with Future Ghost being like one of those, the hidden gem type indie games. And it's like, yeah, I get a little bit of passive income from it, and that's nice. And that can justify me making a sequel, and then, like my wife would be supportive of me just continuing to do that.
Yeah.
Because she sees that, yeah, that is a source of income for us now. And that has been relatively successful. If it gets too big, then you have to deal with all sorts of things where, the internet can be an ugly place. And, as a father of 3 kids, I don't want them to have to worry about their dad copping flack from people who disagree with some of the ideas in the game or whatever, or people who are too much of a fan. It can become sort of unhealthy, that kind of exposure. So I don't know. I want to try and strike a balance with that sort of thing too, I suppose.
I mean, that's I mean, it's respectable for sure. I mean, everyone has their own path and journey that they want to obviously fall in line. And I mean, I think it's good to have those types of boundaries. Like, look, this is my creative outlet. This is where I can kind of share experience or a story or something that I find interesting, and hopefully that there is an okay amount of people that justify the means or justify the time that I put into it. And obviously, yeah, managing a family and managing kids, it can be very difficult. There's a really good quote sometimes that I use, which is like, I mean, and this is doesn't necessarily fall in line to exactly what you're saying, but I've whenever I've tried to like push forward like really great things, like push forward to like do something really big or something like that. There's this rubber band analogy that I've heard, which is like as the further and further you push, you have these things that are like rubber bands where they're trying to pull you back. Even though if you're trying to do something absolutely crazy or something that you're really trying to be ambitious about, and it's hard to push through those things or those obligations and stuff like that. And the analogy goes is like the harder and harder you pull, the harder it is to stretch the rubber band. But once you get to a certain point, those rubber bands break, and then you're free, and you can finally live your full self or things like that. But I like the analogy mainly because I've had those experiences where I've tried to push really hard in one specific direction. I've had, whether it be people or things things that are around me that are saying, hey, you're too crazy, you got to calm down, you got to do this. And it's like sometimes, what's the old saying, nothing ventured, nothing gained or something. And everybody, but back to what you're saying, it's like everyone has their own path. You don't have to be the best of the best of whatever. It's like you can run somewhere that's comfortable for your lifestyle and what you want, and still, as long as it makes sense in your life, then continue to build it. But I think the ultimate thing is just like finishing a project. I think I've talked to several people about like the relief and semi euphoria you get when you finally finish that project that you've been working on for so long. I've had so many issues where it's like I've had so many projects that like I've wanted to I've started out and then just never finished. And I more or less like took a big stand in my life where I'm like I planted a flag. I'm like anything that I start from here on out, I'm seeing to the end, fail or win or whatever the outcome. At the end of the road, I said, I finished it. It did terrible, but I finished it. And I can say it's good. I can move on. And they got once again tangent, but I think uh I think having a goal in mind and having a level at which you're saying I can be comfortable at this level of success, and that's where I want to achieve, so that my life can be good and I'm happy with this. Because I think it's okay to not have something that you're everyone, I feel like a lot of indie devs generally are like, it's going to be the next big greatest thing or whatever, and it's like sometimes you just want to put something out there that you feel proud of, and I think that's perfectly okay.
I mean, I like your analogy, the rubber band analogy. Another rubber band analogy is that you don't want to stretch yourself so far that you break and then you don't end up with a release either. So, you know, um, keeping things realistic and keeping your scope under control and things like this, and your expectations, keeping them realistic as well. I think all that stuff contributes to just sort of your own well-being and the sustainability of the project as well. That being said, a kind of saying that I like to live by is, what is it? It's, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
So, somewhere deep down, like I have those realistic goals in mind. Well, I hope they're realistic, that it becomes, sort of recognized as a hidden gem. But the big dream, I'm not going to say that I don't have a big dream. The big dream is, I reckon Future Ghost would make a really neat TV series. So, if if the IP gets picked up along the lines of, something like Netflix or HBO or something like that, that would be ideal. And I think if it blows up to that degree, then you're not going to have to really worry about the haters and then people being awkward about it anymore, because it's just that big. But it's the in-between space that gives me pause. But like, so HBO, if you're watching, get in touch. But the game's not even finished yet. But I think it would be a great match. But those things are just sort of really deep in the back of the mind.
Yeah.
For now, it is, as you say, it's about shipping. It's about finishing the game and getting it out there. And I mean, this will be my first commercial release. I've released a bunch of smaller games over the decades. The first one goes back to, I think it was 2001 or something. But that was when I was teaching it in schools, teaching programming and a little bit of game dev. It's to Visual Basic. But my first sort of reasonably long game was made in Flash, and that one took me about 6 months, and it was a narrative game. And that did
This
okay.
one took a bit longer.
Yeah, this one's going to take quite a bit longer. But yeah, hopefully it'll be that much better. I mean, when I released that one, I was still basically a kid. I was just in my 20s. So, it was not that mature of a game in many ways. But, but even that one gained some praise and then some notoriety, and, put me in an uncomfortable position that some YouTubers picked it up and were really roasting it at one point, that particular one. But hopefully, I'm hoping that won't happen with Future Ghost. But all of the reactions I'm getting so far from it, with people who have been doing the closed playtesting and the people at that open but live playtesting, they basically were coming through and doing for me, from my perspective. Well, the people who checked it out at the Game Expo, it's all been really positive for the most part. So I'm feeling more comfortable about this project.
Yeah. It's cool, man. I mean, it's funny that you when you talk about like haters and stuff like that. I think it's funny. I mean, I have I have a funny perspective on that. I mean, I love it when people like I don't know, I'm kind of a rough human anyway. So it's just like when people hate on stuff, I was like, okay, let's rumble, man. Let's enter the Thunderdome. Let's see what's going down. But yeah, I mean, it's a cool project. Like I said, one of the things that caught me, what I've said before, is just like your art style was so unique. And you've said you've had Visual Basic and programming. What did you build this? What are you building this in, engine wise, or is this kind of like a homebrew type of system?
Yeah, a lot of people are kind of surprised when they hear me say this because it does feel kind of, it feels bespoke. It feels like I've set up my systems from scratch, but I'm actually building it for the most part over the top of RPG Maker MV.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's a combination of what they call eventing in the engine, which is where you've got your in-game objects, and they can contain a series of commands. It's not pure coding for the most part. It's just using the kind of like in Game Maker, using the inbuilt commands
Okay.
that are there in the engine to do the programming. But also from MV onwards, RPG Maker has had a JavaScript backend, so there's some
Oh,
pure
okay.
code in the JavaScript side of things as well to make certain things work. But yeah, it's RPG Maker. It doesn't look like it, except in certain instances. So some of the in-game menus are still RPG Maker, still vanilla RPG Maker. Like the settings menu that you initially saw on Reddit, that's obviously not. That's something that is completely new. But then also the combat is RPG Maker, except that yeah, it's got a lot of original stuff in there so that it doesn't look or feel too much like it, except for the UI. That's still pretty vanilla.
Mm-hmm. I mean, your UI is really cool. That I think that was the thing that I think I saw. Then I was like, is this a game or what is this? When I first saw it, I mean, yeah, it's cool, man. I think I'm trying to think if there's anything, unless there's anything specific you want to talk about. I've kind of feel like I'm starting to run a little dry. It didn't help that we had that little bit of a technical hiccup. I think we lost a little flow there. But unless there's anything specific you wanna talk about, I'll talk about anything. You can go anywhere you want.
I don't know. We haven't really talked that much about the gameplay, so maybe we could talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
Um, yeah, because like I said earlier, I have just sort of thrown all sorts of gameplay at the player because it's all about telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, for example, there's a flashback early on where the main character he's remembering this time where he almost drowned, and he's sort of swimming to get away from this sort of flash flood. Um, and yeah, so the player will play that little scene, and when you're actually playing, like I had some feedback on Reddit that it doesn't look very dynamic to look at it, but when you're playing it, I've had people squealing and you're feeling really tense that they've got to get away from this wave, and that's sort of the point. It's like I don't really care what it looks like to people on the internet. I care about what it feels like when you're playing it.
Mm.
And is that telling the story? Is that putting you in the character's shoes? Is it making you feel what they would have been feeling
Mm.
if they were actually there? And for that little bit of gameplay, the answer is yes, it works. And so I've got a bunch of little things where it's just, I've tried to make it so that the story is as playable as possible. And I don't really care what I have to do in terms of gameplay to make that work. I'm not worried about fitting a particular genre. I'm not worried about a particular gameplay
Mm-hmm.
loop. I'm more worried about, is this telling the story? And so I've got that kind of, little action sequence here and there. I've got my own approach to quick time events that I've built in there, which is
Mm-hmm.
not a quick time event as such, because I've got a big accessibility focus as well. But which is also something we could talk about. But also it feels a little point and click. It feels a little RPG, especially when you were playing the combat sequences as pure JRPG
Mm-hmm.
for those. But yeah, I just try to sort of really give people a mixed bag, whatever makes the story work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's cool that you have added so many different little gameplay elements that are across so many different types of genres. Um, and yeah, I mean, I want to play it. I want to give it a shot. I want to try it out. I mean, it looks like a fun, unique story, and I want to, like I said, I've said it so many times at this point, but just your art really is interesting, and I think it's cool. And the fact that you hand drew is awesome. Um, yeah. Well, hey, let's do a little bit of an outro and give everyone all of the info that they need about your game and where to find you, where to find the game, when they should expect the demos, or even possibly a possible release date, but just kind of unload everything that everyone would want to know.
Okay, sure. So, yeah, looking for me on socials. I'm active in most places, as at Pinebox Games. So yeah, just whatever your preferred socials are, please look for Pinebox Games. And then yeah, Future Ghost has a Steam page, so please do feel free to wishlist. And also on itch.io, I've got a listing there. Yeah, the playable demo, I'm hoping for a May release, probably late May would be realistic. But yeah, please don't quote me on it because, as I've been saying, it's the kind of thing you're trying to balance with family work life. In terms of a full release, realistically speaking, it's 1 to 2 years away.
Mm.
I can't be more specific than that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I don't know if I get the funding that I was talking about, that could speed things up significantly. So
Yeah.
I don't know, could be earlier. See.
Yeah. Well, the demo for sure is going to be a helpful piece of marketing and a helpful piece of trying to get that you over that next hurdle. Because you're right. Yeah, if you that demo comes out and then you're able to then reach out to these types of organizations that'll give some sort of funding and something like that. So then you can take another 10 months off. You can take 10 months off work to actually, yeah, spend the time on working on it for sure. I mean, it's the hardest thing is balancing your life, because I mean every indie dev more or less is in the same position unless you are several games in, you have a publisher, etc., and things like that. We're all more or less working on our own project for free and balancing out the life and then also income and how do you and then your family and all the other obligations. And when making a game, it's like you can spend there's so much that needs to be built in a game. And I've said this multiple times, but it's just like, it's not just like drawing or making a piece of art or anything like that. It's interactive. It has sound. It has feedback. It has puzzles. It has dialogue. It has a story. There's so many things that you have to build when making a game, that it's not just, well, this weekend I'll sit here and draw something and spend time refining it over time, and now I have this thing that I drew. It's it's overwhelming. It can be very, very, very overwhelming at times. But hey, hopefully you get what you need to finish it out, and I look forward to playing a demo for sure. And I hope it takes you and launches you into the next leg of getting it done, because I think it's a cool story, and I think it looks really, really interesting. So other than that, well, thanks. Thanks for being on the show. I appreciate our conversation.